Thank you so much for watching this video. Just a note before we do get into the show, there was some weird internet latency things going on with this one. So some of the moments in the clips within this YouTube video might seem a little bit weird, like I'm talking over people. I'm not, okay? I have bad internet connection. But we're getting it figured out and sorted, so it's not going to be like that for the next one. And if you do listen to the podcast on any of the podcasting platforms, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, it's totally edited, so it's all lined up, and there shouldn't be any of those weird latency issues. But just know that it's not me cutting people off. This is just a disclaimer to say I had bad internet, so there was some weird stuff going on. But thank you for watching, and sorry about that. Next time, there won't be any of those problems. Got like a 100-foot Ethernet cable. I'm ready to plug right into my modem, kick ADIS off. It's going to be good. Thank you so much for watching. Hello and welcome to another episode of SoFly. It is, one second, I'm looking at the dates on my phone. It's August 9th. Look at that. We're back recording another episode. Of course, we got me, Mitch. We've got Yilma.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got Aldo.
Hey, everybody.
And we're super excited today because we're chatting about something we've actually spoken a lot about on the show, which is the Credit River, a river near us here in our home waters in southern Ontario. We're talking about it actually a couple of days before we're doing a fish party here in Toronto, which we'll talk more about after too. But our last fish party was all about saving the brook trout in the Credit River. It was the Southern Ontario Trout Opener Social, and this one's the money's going back to the Credit River brook trout as well for this. So we're really excited to be talking with somebody that's doing a bunch of work to help protect the credit and the brook trout in the Credit River. We've got Andrew Howarth, who's a PhD student at Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario, and a member in both the Fish Ecology and Conservation Physiology Lab and Ecological Research and Applications Collaborative. It's rare I say such academic things on the show, but it sounds very incredible. His focus is on socio-ecology of freshwater fisheries, and he's interested in creative and unconventional ways to build capacity and resilience in Canada's freshwater fisheries. More importantly, though, he's a total fishing geek, and he's obsessed with fly fishing and fly tying, and he has been for more than a decade. He spends almost all of his free time chasing muskie, steelhead, and any other fish he can find to take his fly. As Andrew says, for better or worse, the lines between his work and play are super blurry. Today, he's on SoFly. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mitch. I should have given you less of a mouthful in that intro. I'm realizing now. Oh. Those are words that I stumble over every single time I say them. So sorry.
Hey, man, it's super impressive. I mean, even though, I asked how to pronounce your last name, I think I still kind of messed that up too. So, I've had a lot of coffee today.
It's Howarth,
thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah.
Howarth, yes.
Thanks for having me. I've listened to your podcast since it came to be.
Whoa.
So it's
Oh,
That's awesome.
Thank you.
why?
That's awesome, man. Super excited that you decided to come and chat because, we're all the stuff you've been doing. I mean, we've been talking about to John. John's actually mentioned you quite a few times and the work you're doing on the credit. So we're really stoked to be talking. But where are you calling in from today? Are you in Ottawa?
I'm actually in Oakville. I'm visiting with my parents while I do some work on the credit.
Nice.
I live in Ottawa these days, but yeah, this is the best place for me to stay while I'm back here doing some work.
Totally. Yeah, not too far from the credit at all.
That's awesome.
Have you been fishing fishing a lot lately, or like what's been going on? Too busy working?
Yeah, not a lot of fishing for fun. This week I've been fishing for science, I guess technically, although like that's a little disingenuous. It's still fun to be out, but August is kind of, as far like other than the months where everything's iced over, August is kind of a slow month for me.
See, that's always so cool though. We have people on the show that are like, yeah, I haven't really been fishing a lot for fun. I've been fishing a lot for work lately. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's about the only reason that I would be out brook fishing this time of year and this kind of heat would be for this and nothing else. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I'm never up there fishing brook trout at this time of year. It's a bit of a different game, but it's more the same than it is different, which I was kind of surprised to see.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, well that's cool. We'll get more into sort of the credit and obviously your research and yeah, like you say, fishing this time of year for work. Before we get into that stuff though, why don't we just like kind of go back and start with how you got into fishing in general, and then we could talk about how you got into fly fishing. So how did you get, like, what was your first memories with a fishing rod?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of the time during summer when I was younger, like, 5 to 10 years old, up at my grandmother's house. She lives up north of Belleville.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
And so when I was up there, one of the things that you just did was fish. Everybody locally fishes. When you're hanging out with your cousins and your brother, you go fishing. So for whatever reason, I liked doing it more than any of them and wanted to do it all the time past a certain point. And then I guess a little over 10 years ago, when I was sort of in my early teens, we went on a family vacation to New Hampshire. And the type of fishing that you do down there is, you fly fish for trout. There's kind
Right.
of nothing else to
Right.
do. And that's just sort of how I got into that. And, I went from wanting to be a bass master to like, this is way
Like
better.
Totally.
So I went and
Did you grow up in Ottawa, or I mean, I know you go to school there now, but is that what you're from originally?
I'm from here,
Okay.
Oakville, GTA. So this is where I grew up, and I've only recently got there. I understand. I think Mitch is from Ottawa,
too.
right?
So is Aldo, yeah, both of us, and
Aldo's from Ottawa
yeah.
too,
So
right?
actually, I went to Carleton, but I mean, we fished around the university. Like, there's such good
Yeah.
water there to fish too, So
Oh yeah,
yeah, Ottawa's great.
yeah. When I started up there, I was taking tips from you guys on the podcast. You guys would
Awesome.
mention a spot or two, and then I'd go.
Oh
check
yeah,
it
we're
out.
burning spots and we're telling people where to go, and we're it's great. But
We're
yeah.
burning gar spots mainly. If
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
Hogsback
totally.
Falls,
there's not a lot.
gar.
Oh yeah,
Telling you,
Yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
totally.
burn it up.
Whereabouts north of Belleville did you fish as a kid?
So my grandmother lives in Tweed.
Okay.
Oh,
She still
cool.
does, and she's right on the Moira
Yeah.
River. So the Moira River was full of smallmouth bass, and still
Yeah.
is. That was kind of a lot of rock bass, a lot of smallmouth bass, and as it turned out, I guess a pretty ideal way to get into fishing because it's incredibly easy.
Oh yeah, totally. The Moira's awesome, What a cool river.
Yeah, I like fishing the Moira.
Yeah.
There's huge muskie in there
when
too,
did-
isn't there?
Yeah, there aren't there, or were there?
I thought there was.
Yeah, there's in certain spots, yeah, they're kind of limited to the sections of the river that are deeper and can actually hold a fish like that and lots of prey. But yeah, in certain sections, there's some pretty big muskie. Yeah.
Nice.
Radical.
When did you get into, like, so after you grew up you grew up fishing, went to New Hampshire, learned how to fly fish, and then did you bring that kind of like love home and start fishing in around Oakville?
Yeah, yeah. So I immediately decided like this is what I didn't decide. It was just a thing that I liked doing and wanted to be doing. So the closest salmon that I could get to were Great Lakes steelhead and brown trout and whatever else you could find in Bronte Creek.
Yeah.
Bronte.
So I started doing that. Spending summer fishing for smolts in the headwaters, that sort of thing, and then eventually realized that when you live in Ontario and you fly fish, you should probably fish for bass too. So it expanded to basically everything that was available.
Nice. So I was just
So
double checking to make sure there was no fan.
Yeah,
on. I think we're good.
No, there is a fan on. Let me just try to find that out. One sec. Be
Yeah,
right
sorry.
back.
No worries.
Was it similar? Was it a similar story for you guys? Like what, did you? I don't know. It seems like a lot of people I talk to, you start out fly fishing and it's all about trout, almost because it seems like it should be, and then
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
when in Rome, you fish.
Oh, fly fishing's totally like that. I mean, like it was like that for Aldo and I in a big way, I mean, I think it was, right? Like
For sure.
growing up in Ottawa,
for
it was
sure
like
it was,
warm
yeah.
water fish, pike, bass, that kind of stuff, and we
Right.
were looking for trout, and we had to go to upstate New York to do it. Like we had to drive a little bit.
Which,
Yeah.
funny enough, now looking back on that, it's like the same driving distances from like my house here in Toronto to the Grand. So like what seemed
Yeah.
like a far drive back then is pretty typical. So actually, if you grow up in Ottawa
Yeah.
and you're willing to go to upstate New York, I think it's and to get that trout stream fix, it's not really that hard, but like you said, like I think
Yeah.
it's pretty typical, I think, for people from Ottawa too to want to be a bass master because there is so much bass fishing in around Ottawa, and there's so many tournaments in around Ottawa. Like my neighbor,
Yeah.
was a tournament angler, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what got in a way me into fishing. Like he would come home with like, they have like 400 million rods, and he would like just give me the rods he didn't need. It was like the best neighbor ever. He would come home and like with a box of like, I'm sure just lures that were given to him, and rods are given to him. He's like, I'm not going to use this. Give it to this stupid kid.
Totally.
But yeah, and then like you learn that bass fishing is pretty awesome, and the trout doesn't have to be everything, especially because our summers get so hot, and of course even hotter now.
Yeah. I think you kind of learn to go with the flow a little.
So what got you into sort of, what you're doing with academics? Like, was it fishing that kind of got you into wanting to pursue that?
Yeah, definitely. I went to a liberal arts undergrad school and had enough freedom to sort of, start to veer toward the research and the topics I was interested in. And fishing was the obvious choice, fish. I guess fisheries would be more accurate, but fishing is definitely where the interest comes from.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Because like when I was like growing up learning to fish too, it was like maybe I'll do something like that in school. They're like, "What are you gonna do when you grow up?" I'm like, "I like fish," and then I realized I couldn't do science because I'm an idiot. So, it didn't work out quite the same way as it did for you. But
you realize you couldn't pronounce the courses, and you're like, "Well, you know what?
Maybe English is better suited for me." But that's cool, man. I mean, so what was your path? Like, how did you find yourself from starting college to where you're at now with the PhD stuff?
Yeah, I did my undergrad in environmental science, and toward the end of it, did an independent study, an honors thesis, where I could choose my topic, and I did a fisheries topic.
Yeah.
After leaving undergrad, I knew sort of if I wanted to work in the field, that graduate degree was sort of necessary. There are jobs for just undergraduate degrees in fisheries, but for the most part, if you want to pursue it, you go to grad school. I didn't have to look very far. I already read and cited papers by one of my co-supervisors, Steve Cook, and I was aware of his lab at Carleton. And so I reached out to him. He put me in touch with Vivian Nguyen, who's my other co-supervisor, and the primary investigator at the other lab that I mentioned. And once I was in contact with them, we were able to pretty quickly sort out a project and a path forward.
So why,
that's pretty cool.
Before we get into maybe like why the credit, why the Brookies, what, for people listening that don't know, can you explain what the Credit River is? Like, what even is this water source?
Yeah. Yeah, the Credit River is one of the bigger rivers draining into the north shore of Lake Ontario.
Bless you, Yoma.
Bless you, Yoma.
Oh, I thought I muted it. No. I was clicking at the same time and like that.
No, this is why I
Clicking
like
at the
this
same
podcast.
time. What's going on over there?
Not asking. Haven't asked any questions yet, and all I do is sneeze. Oh, there Yoma's on this.
Yoma is on the
God.
podcast.
I love it.
Sorry, Andrew. The Credit River.
But yeah, no, apology needed. I guess the most relevant section of the credit, or the upper credit, is what we're talking about specifically. So when you get past Brampton, Terracotta, up toward the escarpment and where the credit starts to gain elevation, you get to the headwater area of it, which is, relative to the surrounding region, it's a very high quality cold water stream habitat, which is very conducive to, good trout populations and fishing. Above two large waterfalls, one at Bell Fountain and Cataract Falls around Caledon, you have populations of relatively unaltered wild brook trout that have existed there as long as people have been around on this continent. They provide, a really good opportunity and setting to study brook trout, in the region. A lot of other populations in adjacent watersheds, the Humber comes to mind. There's 16 Mile Creek, Bronny Creek. There's there's all sorts of rivers draining into the North Shore, but the Credit is arguably the one, aside from a couple maybe out east, that is, intact and still has high quality habitat and good populations of brook trout. So it's a good place to go in and do the type of research that Steve and I decided to do.
Given, I've never asked this question before. Like, is it the escarpment that's made it so resilient? Yeah. Like if we're comparing it to the Humber or
16 Mile or any of those,
Bronte or something like that, 16 Mile, it doesn't. I don't think anyway. They don't benefit from the same kind of elevation change as the Credit. Is that's what keeping it cold or the?
I'm not sure. That might play a part. I think it has a lot to do with, I think the main thing, if I were to guess, I'm not too knowledgeable about the history of the watershed, but just the amount of development and the amount of encroachment on the stream, I think, has the biggest impact. And, the amount of exploitation those fish see and how intact their habitat remains as people begin to build around it. I think that has the most to do with it. And that could be a terrain thing. It's more difficult to develop, but for whatever reason, those headwaters have remained pretty intact, at least compared to other ones. There's all sorts of damming. There's mill ponds all over them, but
so it's possible.
Yeah, the quality
it's
of the
possible,
habitat.
like Bronte, 16 Mile, like all those creeks at one point were like just as like prestigious isn't the right word, but like as habitable, pristine? I suppose. Pristine. That's a good word. Thank you, Yilma.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm sure they totally would have been, and it's less publicized, I think. But if you go out east to creeks like the Ganaraska, the Wilmot, there's really good habitat in the headwaters of those rivers too. Yeah, and then more recently, I guess the relevant thing to say is that advocates, anglers, people who have a vested interest in conserving brook trout populations up there have done a ton of work to, I guess mitigate whatever stress is happening in other watersheds.
Right.
It's cool to hear, even though like we know what the Credit is, and of course like it's good for listeners for you to define what it is. It's cool to hear you talk about what it is. Just talking about like the water and the fish. Like it really, like, as much as we know, it's like such a unique body of water. Like it's such a great thing so close to home. Is that kind of why you picked the Credit for? I guess that is why you'd pick it for your PhD.
Yeah, well, that for the same reason that it does stand out in the region. It's also a good site for research because, like I said, those brook trout populations are, healthy compared to the surrounding region. There's good numbers of fish. If you're going to do a telemetry study like the one I'm doing right now, you need a good number of fish that are large enough to hold a tag, and swim around a river that is in good enough shape that they can move around and behave as they would, in an unaltered system. So if you want to study brook trout as they are relatively undisturbed in southern Ontario, you choose the Credit River, I think.
So,
obviously a lot to unpack there. It's like, where do we start? I guess, what is your study? What are you currently focusing on?
So there's two big components to it. The first one, for which I did a lot of the work back in the spring, is spatial ecology. So long story short, the use of habitat by those brook trout across seasons. And we're studying that in both the Credit main stem and the West Credit. So acoustic telemetry is the technique we're using. And acoustic telemetry, in this case means implanting in a number of fish acoustic tags. So ones that emit a signal, in this case every 15 seconds. And we surgically implant those in those fish.
Where? In the belly, right?
We have at different points.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's a very, very basic surgery. Basically, you make a small incision, you pop this tag in, and you sew it up, and that fish swims around with that thing. And it pings, like I said, every 15 seconds. And we have what are called acoustic receivers that pick up that signal placed throughout the river at sort of checkpoints where, if a fish travels through there and it's close enough to the acoustic receiver and,
Cool.
that ping happens, like I said, every 15 seconds, we pick it up and then we can see how they move around and use the stream habitat across seasons.
So the receivers are in this, like the receivers are in the stream bank?
Yeah, so they're down on the bottom, weighted down with sandbags,
Hmm.
hidden away under logs and things like that. Um, yeah, you look for pools basically because the more of a deep, quiet pool you have, the bigger your sort of detection area is, and the more reliably I think we'll be able to detect those fish. And then, yeah, based on where you pick them up across the season, you can sort of put together a picture of what they're doing
So
Do
how
the
small
pings
are these
emit?
receivers? Because
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna ask, do the pings emit sound at all? Like
Yeah, so it's
people?
acoustic. It's not
Okay, I
something
was gonna
that
say,
we
like people
can
would be going down to
hear.
the river,
These
like
tags in
bing, bing,
particular.
bing, 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 looking for these trout, and there's beeping all over the place.
Yeah,
Be wild.
yeah. It's not something. I know there are acoustic tags where you can actually, if you put them up close to your ear, hear sort of a
Right, right.
tick. It's more of a ticking sound, and each tag obviously has a unique enough sound that we can distinguish
Wow,
one
that's
tag from
crazy.
the next. Yeah.
Sorry,
cool.
Yelma, I cut you off. I don't know what you were gonna say.
no, I like that. That was a good question. I like that one. No, I was just seeing how small they are because the brookies obviously they need to fit into their
Yeah.
little bellies. So
Yeah. Yeah. The tags are, I guess they're about the
Oh,
size of your
wow.
pinky nail, I would
it's
say.
like a little microchip.
These ones in particular, they're yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're small. It's hard to describe. They're
Hmm.
sort of ice cream cone shaped, and they weigh these ones, I believe, 1.1 grams. You have to make sure one of the things you have to make sure early is that you're not going to be burdening the
Right.
fish, overburdening them with the tag itself and affecting their movement. So we determined based on the weight of the tag and the electrofishing data that we had prior to the study on those fish that 14
Oh,
centimeters would
okay.
be a good minimum size. So anything we electrofished over 14
Got it.
centimeters got a tag and
Okay.
is
So you tag the
Okay.
fish. You start beginning to aggregate data. What is that data telling you, or what do you hope to? What do you hope? How do I put this? What do you hope the data reveals to you? Like, what is that? What are you aggregating that data for?
so it's pretty exploratory in this case. I don't have a lot of specific hypotheses I want to test. Basically, I want to see how they use the stream habitat across seasons. What's really important for them, for example, in the peak of summer. I think that's the most interesting period. That's sort of that environmental limiting factor, I think, to brook trout in the region is increasingly becoming, summer and the most stressful period they're in. And so, example of a question I'd really like to answer is where do these fish go in the summer? How do they respond and how do they move in relation to extreme heat waves, events like that? And then, that can also be applied to the winter, right? Because as things warm up, yeah, we're concerned about summer and when it gets really hot, but these fish have evolved, specific overwintering behaviors. And when we have milder winters and we have thaws in February as opposed to March, that's hypothetically going to disrupt that behavior too. So getting in there while we can still sort of understand, at least in part, how these fish behave, when things are sort of good for them, I think gives us a clue about what might happen as, winters become warmer and, we have blowouts in the winter that we didn't used to have, or how things are going to work in summer when, we have heat waves that are, more severe and more frequent than in the past.
Ah, okay. And so is that what kind of socio-ecology means? Like how the fish behave with another, or like because if I'm looking at your focus,
Right.
it says socio-ecology of freshwater fisheries, or is that how we interact with freshwater
Yeah,
fisheries? Right.
you got it with the second one.
Right.
Socioecology has to do with, a socio-ecological system, which,
Oh
you know,
man, I was
an
really hoping it'd be about
ecosystem.
fish friends. I was really hoping it'd be about the buddy relationships between brookies.
Yeah. Well, funny
Love
enough,
that.
one of the papers on credit brook trout that is out there was done in I think 1987, and it
Yeah.
has to do with their habitat use in winter, and one of the main findings is how gregarious they are in winter and how much they'll group up and hang out together
Oh,
and
that's fun.
Oh,
be more
nice. Yeah.
social. So
Brook trout
interesting.
party
fun.
in the winter.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
Okay, so that's
Oh,
cool.
that's
So
cool.
you're aggregating data. You see how they move around and see if, our change, obviously climate change and how that affects, blowouts early And then the second phase of your study is, because you said there are two components, the second component
Right.
being...
Yeah, the second component has to do with physiology. So this is the health of the fish, in particular, like in this case, in relation to stressors. The two big ones for me are exhaustive exercise, aka angling, but you could also count predator evasion as, a stressor that would cause exhaustion, physical exhaustion. And then the really big one is thermal stress. So for obvious reasons, this is something we're all really interested in. Fly fishers, this is intuitive because, when the water gets too hot, you don't go out and fish. So we all understand that thermal stress is relevant, angling stress is relevant, but what's really relevant is the interaction of stressors like this. And so that's, even if fly fishers don't use these exact terms, they understand that, interacting those stressors with each other can have, particularly severe effect. So I've sort of set up a study where I'll look at, the interaction between those two stressors and compare it to other things like their baseline state when conditions are more optimal for them, or, what their health is like post-angling, post-capture, when conditions are optimal versus what does that same thing look like when conditions are pretty suboptimal.
Right.
That's cool.
Because, me fishing for a brook trout when it's cold out might not, might not be enough of a stressor to kill a fish, but when it's hot out and those two stressors combine, then that's a huge problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. The effects are multiplicative, and that's sort of the key.
One thing I did want to ask about the tags was, because you mentioned just like last question about the tags, but you mentioned you mentioned these, like, you put them in the fish in like kind of a surgery, but it's not really surgery, and then you're actually able to like track the fish sort of like just using like cumulative data. You're not like tracking each individual fish, right? Like it's not really like that.
Yeah, so it's different from what's called radio telemetry, which has been used more often in the past. Radio telemetry, you actually actively go and you track the fish with an antenna. In this case, we have these acoustic receivers that pick up the signal, and those are static. Those stay in the same place year round.
Right.
And every time you get a ping on one, you can say, well, this fish was in this spot, and then you go and you at the end of the season, download the data from every receiver. And like I said, each one of those tags has a unique signature. And so you can, when you put it all together, get a big picture.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Sonar.
Okay, so two questions then. Just last two questions is, does the data tell you if fish are dying? And two, do the tags, like, can the tags have any negative effect on the fish? Like, can they potentially, because I know brook trout are so sensitive. Do you find that the tags are super invasive, or is it like, no, not really, like we figured out the way to do it?
Yeah, the main risks with tag plantation would be obviously something going wrong in the surgery. They're small fish, they're delicate, so you go in there with a scalpel, and if they, if you're not careful and they squirm and you puncture their spleen, that's a where it could go wrong. Luckily, we had none of those. Infection post surgery is another risk. I didn't worry too much about that because, we keep things very sterile when we do the surgeries.
Right.
And another real priority was doing those surgeries early in the season before water temperatures got up to a point where a fish could be immunocompromised and susceptible to, parasites and all sorts of bugs for other reasons. So those are the main risks, I think. The other one, which we sort of mentioned earlier, was them being overburdened by the tags themselves. And the way we, mitigate or avoid that is to just set a minimum size, which in our case was 14 centimeters, and make sure that we're not, putting a big giant tag in a tiny fish that can barely,
so how long
get around with that.
do the tags stay in for? Or how long do you take them out after? Does it fall?
The tags. We're so obsessed with the tags. Like, what are the tags? Can I have a tag?
Because I know
Andrew's like,
Andrew,
Dude,
when
get on the tags.
when some of us, there's like the chips that we put in our hands now that open up doors and like all that stuff. So like, and our body tends to like become naturalized with the
what?
With it.
You have a chip in your hand?
You have a chip in your hand that opens your
I
door?
do. No, I don't have one of those.
I don't know what those do.
Cyborg man.
Yeah, and our body becomes
Cyborg
like sort of
Yoma.
one with this, almost like a singular thing. So does that happen with the fish, or do you take? Is it temporary tags? I'm sorry about all the tag questions. This is so interesting.
Yeah, so I don't
It is
know.
cool.
I'm happy to answer them. So the tags, we won't retrieve them. We have no way really to retrieve them other
Right.
than going and electrofishing the stream till we
Yeah.
found every last fish with a tag, which we probably never, might never happen. In all likeliness, some have been lost to predation already just naturally, right? So those fish, if that's the case, are no longer in the study. But the tags themselves last 465 days. These ones in particular, the duration depends a little bit on the tag size, right? Because a bigger tag, you can have more power, and you can, like there's some of my colleagues are doing telemetry research on muskie, and a muskie can obviously carry a big tag, and some of those tags last 9 years.
Wow.
In this case,
Wow.
they're brook trout, and we want them to ping every 15 seconds.
Right.
465 is what we get out of them.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I swear this is the last tag question. How many fish did you tag? I think you said it earlier.
What
but
color is it?
I missed it. How many? How many did you guys actually do the surgery on?
So we had 65 tags. We put 33 in fish in the main stem and 32 in the west credit.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Wow.
We're all
Everybody's
tagged
good
out.
with the
Tags
tag
are good. I'm
questions?
good. Yeah. I've figured it all out. I'm tagged out.
Okay, so I guess you could say, what are the, you performed the study over how many years?
So, like I said, the tags last 465, and then it's a matter of how long does it take to take that data, process it, and write something up. But I would say roughly probably something like 2.5 years for the entirety of it. But I'm just finishing up data collection on the physiology portion, which I'd like to start analyzing this September.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
Awesome.
it's new ground for me. I've never done genetic analyses like this or anything like that. So I'm hoping that by the end of this year I can have some early results for that, and I'd also like to download some of that telemetry data at the end of this summer and just look at the summer period itself. But in the end of the really interesting thing will be telemetry data at the end of the 465-day period, where we have a year and change to look at what the remaining fish did for the entirety of the period.
Very cool.
Cool. The hypothesis is on the edge. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so brook trout, I think, are a very prime example of an sort of on the edge species here in southern Ontario, at least. Says because of climate impacts and development, exploitation that comes with having large populations nearby, these brook trout exist at the confluence of all the major stressors, all the things that affect brook trout in a negative way, sort of convene here. And we've lost populations of brook trout in the region to exactly that. So the fact that they're sort of at the southern end of their species range, and they're faced with all of these other more acute impacts from anglers, but more land use, I guess, is the bigger one. These fish are on the edge in that sense, where as things become worse for freshwater fish in the region, these are going to be some of the first ones to tell us what's going on, right? Like, sadly enough, they're some of the first to go, right? Like, we're not going to lose smallmouth bass in southern Ontario anytime soon, but we're at risk of losing brook trout if things go in a particularly negative direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you hoping for?
Sad, right?
What,
Yeah.
what are you hoping for your work to kind of inform, and what are you hoping the outcome of it all to be? Like, save the brook trout, I'm assuming?
Yeah, well, I think understanding more about brook trout can only help us conserve them. I think one of the things that
Well
I
put.
find sort of bothersome, anytime I think about it, is the fact that our capacity in the resources that are available for conservation and fisheries management are just so limited, for both legitimate reasons and reasons that I would sort of consider illegitimate. But the fact is, we don't have much to work with, and so the more we understand, the better we can use what resources we have, and the better we can spend our time and effort trying to conserve brook trout. And yeah, I think there's all sorts of things that can happen. You don't really know until you get the results, but providing managers with a better understanding, for example, of stream brook trout can help them, tailor what they're doing potentially to better conserve brook trout and to regulate more effectively. Because, the Ministry of Natural Resources, this is no knock on them, it's very hard for them to go in addition to all their other responsibilities, take a look at stream brook trout in the Credit River, let alone all the subpopulations of stream brook trout in the Upper Credit, right? Like, it's just such a tall task, and any way you can support by improving the understanding of it or collecting data that otherwise wouldn't be collected, I think gives us an opportunity to understand what's going on with brook trout better and to optimize our conservation and management strategies based on that.
Yeah, no, that makes tons of sense. And I mean, like you say, like arming ourselves with pertinent information that we can use as arguments against, the people that are maybe they don't have the river interests in mind. Like if we could go back to them with data that says this is what we need to do, that's great. Because I mean, otherwise it's sort of just like, we like trout. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that might be worth mentioning, I guess, is so the physiological component of the study involves genomic work. So it's funded by, the project that this is part of, the big project that this is sort of situated within, is funded by Genome Canada, and a lot of the interest, it's the GenFish project, in case anyone wants to look it up, GEN-fish, and it'll turn it up on Google. But a lot of their interest is in creating tools that will help us rapidly assess the health, adaptations, and the presence of stressors in populations of brook trout and all sorts of other freshwater fish. So I guess one of the really exciting things about going in and doing genomic work on brook trout is contributing to the development of tools that will allow us hypothetically to go into streams, like the Credit or other water bodies, and even let other species, similar or maybe even dissimilar to brook trout. And by going in and, say, taking a non-lethal tissue sample from a certain number of individuals in that population, go into a laboratory and then determine with high precision and, a high amount of detail, how are those fish doing? Because, we're, for good reason, more interested in sublethal impacts and sort of long-term chronic stress. And it's hard to study that, I think, is one of the issues. It's costly, it's not efficient, and there's just not a lot of good ways to do it. But I'm excited, and I hope that some of my work will contribute to the development of tools that allow us to go in and get that info that we typically just don't get these days. But technological change is it's bringing it within reach, I think is accurate.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. Like that kind of tech's unlocking that kind of opportunity for us. It's super cool. Are you hopeful for like the brook trout population in the Credit? Like, what do you? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot for like a negative answer, but I mean, how do you feel about the state of brook trout and where things are going in the Credit?
I think I'm like pretty much everyone where I'm pretty concerned. The whole the on the edge scenario is super concerning, and I don't think it's in any way controversial to say that. I do find that the fish are more resilient and robust than we often give them credit for. I think anglers err on the side of caution when it comes to, say, handling brook trout, and that's good. I think it should continue, but you mentioned earlier, the fragility of the fish and going in and doing surgeries, and that was one of the scariest things, going in and doing the first few surgeries. Like, is this going to go great, or am I going to kill the first 3 fish and have to rethink this entire project, right? But you find out doing that, sort of how robust and resilient those fish can be. It's impressive. That being said, they have their limits. If the water temperatures in that river stay above 24 degrees Celsius for prolonged periods because, the habitat deteriorates and our climate's changing, there's not anything they're going to be able to do to, really maintain themselves. They're ectotherms, like all freshwater fish are, pretty much all freshwater fish, so they can't thermoregulate physiologically like we can. They have to find cool water. That's their only option. They have to thermoregulate behaviorally. So that's a huge limiting factor for freshwater fish, right? And if you think about a brook trout in a stream, it's nothing like a marine fish that can go and find cool water virtually anywhere, anytime, right?
Yeah.
Brook trout have to stay in that stream, and if they if they can't find the cool water that they need to survive and remain healthy and reproductive, for example, there's nothing really for them to do.
Yeah.
So it's worrisome, but I think if we give them the chance to, we provide them what they need to survive, they'll do it.
And so I mean that's like, I mean, you obviously mentioned climate change, which is like, I think the bigger thing that we know is happening, and it's like, well, that's a huge thing we've got to figure out. Apart from that, though, like, are there things we can do to the credit to ensure the brook trout are okay for as long as possible? Like, what can be done?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do at a local scale seems to be going in and making the stream habitat as high quality as you can. And Trout Unlimited does a ton of work, a ton of extremely high quality work on that specifically. I'm sure we're all aware of it. You go to the Upper Credit and you see all sorts of evidence, tree planting and installing shoreline structures, things like that. So at a local scale, that's a huge thing. Anglers obviously, can have a big impact if anglers are going in and handling fish irresponsibly, fishing in hot temperatures. Their impact on the fishery is going to be, probably significant. But I think generally speaking, fly fishers and other anglers who are conservation, who are, I guess, have a good conservation initiative are pretty good about that. Yeah. At a local scale, you sort of just do those things, and then the whole, the problem with climate is it's just a global issue that Trout Unlimited Canada, as good as the work they do is,
it's a band-aid, I suppose, right? Like stream restoration and stuff like that. Sort of it's the only, like you say, the only thing we can do right now, and like trying to take as best care as we can of the river as possible is like, and I mean that's, I guess, how people can get involved, is they can go do these things and actually have a positive impact for at least prolonging the it's good.
Yeah, I see it as exactly like you said, giving them the best chance to withstand the other things that can't control as much. And then developing responsibly, which is I sort of hesitate to mention that one because that's not really within our control, but the public, I guess, at a large scale and over a long enough period of time can influence how we develop these areas, and there's a good way to do it for sure. You sort of can have your cake and eat it too. It just depends on how much.
I kind of feel like we're getting,
if you develop responsibly,
like to your point, Andrew, like we're getting to that point where it's like we kind of have to develop responsibly or everyone's gonna die. And it's like, let's just hope that we can figure that out before the credit is like completely torqued, because it's like, it's inevitable. It has to be inevitable, right? Like figuring out this balance of, like responsible development and making sure people are still, they can still have their sprawl and like have good lives, but like making sure that it doesn't like just destroy the
We're so reactive. For once, it'd be good to be preventative.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's this sort of unstoppable force development, and I think I don't know this, for sure, obviously, but it seems like the best strategy in this case is to sort of try and influence it. And
no, I feel I know that's like constantly like been our struggle too. Is like, and you know what? Like speaking directly about the West Credit, like that's been obviously the fight, right? It's like there's development going on in Aaron, and it's like people are like, listen, we gotta either like not do this or do it right, because if we don't do it right, it sucks. Like why would you want to destroy this like you say, the credit is like one of the last remaining incredible tribs, flows into the Great Lake of Ontario, and we've got to protect it, so I mean thanks for doing this work, because it's obviously like it's a big deal to be able to like actually understand what's going on and understand the lives of these fish and this ecosystem that I mean, as sad as it is, might be in turmoil. Well, it is in turmoil. I just hope it's not like a remember when story that we all know about.
I know. It's not fun to think about, eh?
It's not.
And then start talking to new anglers when they're 20 and we're all in their 60s.
We're gonna be those anglers,
There's Brook
there was
Trout
Brook Trout in the
the
Credit River back in my day.
Yeah, and then the 20-year-olds are like, and they're like, well, maybe you shouldn't have
People
fished
be like,
for them.
okay, old man.
whatever. catching mako sharks in Lake Ontario. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that's kind of cool, I guess.
I did it on my radio show. It was called a podcast. It was amazing.
Get away from
God,
me.
get away from me. What the hell's a podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a
Yes.
fun question. Just to, what's the most surprising thing you've learned while tracking the brook trout? Was there a moment where you're like, wow, I had no idea the brook trout did, or I had no idea that they lived, or I had no idea that brook
Grow
trout
hair.
X.
What? Oh, little mohawks.
Sure.
Bitch.
Yeah, I guess there's not so many like big revelations. I don't think there's just cool stuff that happens. Like for example, when you go in an electrofish, you stick an anode in just about anywhere, and it's cool to see what kind of water a brook trout will pop out of. Stuff that you wouldn't cast to, or in a lot of cases, stuff that you would cast to. I guess if you're an angler, you develop a pretty good sense of, oh, that's got to have a fish in it. But yeah, there was one case where I just like very on a whim stuck the anode in an electrofish this little pile of sticks on the side of the river that didn't look particularly fishy, and one of the bigger brook trout I saw on the side, it just squirted right out of it immediately, and it's just not something I would ever cast to. So stuff like that happens, which is cool. We recaptured fish that we tagged, which was cool. You
very
get one in the
cool.
net, and you think, awesome, we're gonna do the surgery. Like, here's another tagged fish, and then you flip it over and you see the suture there, and you're like,
That's
oh
cool.
no, we got this one
Wow.
already.
I mean, that shows you that the catch and release and the surgery and everything
Random-
works, like.
Yeah, that was nice to see. I saw an angler recapture one of our fish one time, which it was about 3 weeks after it was tagged, assuming it's one of the fish I thought it must have been, and it was doing well. So that's nice to see. You find out how big the brook trout in the area are, which there are, nice big brook trout in the upper credit. It's stuff like that. No major revelations, but we'll see what happens when we download some data.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear
That's
about the
awesome.
data and like what you learn. It's gonna be really cool. Okay, well, we do segment Mitch's
Whoa,
Fishes
we're
5
there
at the end of
already?
every show where we ask every guest the same 5 questions. We're there
Yeah.
already.
Hey,
I know,
Andrew.
Time
Time flies.
Yeah, man, it's been
Yeah,
almost an
fishy
hour.
fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, there's cool.
Next.
Very interesting.
Yilma
Yilma
Campbell, everybody.
why don't you
Yilma
go
Campbell.
sneeze again, Yilma? Why don't you go sneeze?
He'll be here all week.
I can't believe I sneezed. at
Try the
second. I
veal.
really pressed that button.
Try
the
Okay,
veal.
sorry.
He'll be
Go
here
ahead.
all week.
That's okay. It's all good. So I believe you. Okay, so the number one, the first question at Mitch's Fishes 5 is, what is your favorite fish and why? It's got to be brook trout, right? Can you imagine? Carp. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. Impossible. Yeah, it's like picking a favorite kid. I guess I almost have to say brook trout now, but I guess a more truthful answer would be steelhead. I really like
Nice.
steelhead.
Yeah.
I've spent more time fishing for steelhead. Yeah, it's kind of weird to say that, I guess, and have done basically all your steelhead fishing in the Great Lakes. But if I had to pick one, I guess maybe that would be
Hey,
the
that's
one.
cool, man.
But
Yeah.
again, it's like picking your favorite
Totally.
kid, right? Like, I don't think any of us could.
Tough. I know.
I don't know. Do you guys have a clear-cut
I think
favorite?
we all have at one point said, favorites. I get it,
Yeah.
but I mean, I hear you. I mean, like, we just like catching fish, right? Like, they're all great in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I could confidently say bonefish
Oh,
if we're
okay.
gonna say saltwater fish, like
Okay.
easy front runner, and that's more to do with like just chilling out
Beautiful.
and walking a flat. And
Right.
There's just something about that that's nice.
Yeah.
But then it's harder with freshwater fish because even this year when we went,
Mhm.
we were lucky enough to go to Lodge 88, and
Right.
they have brook trout fishing and pike fishing, and we went half a day brook trout fishing, and we were like, "You guys want to go catch some pike?" Because it's like you forget how fun, certain species is or something, and and then every time this time of year comes around, I'm always like, I guess I'll go bass fishing, and then
Yeah.
the first time one hits a
Yeah.
popper, I'm like, you're right back in.
This is the best.
So it's a good point. It's really hard to pinpoint. I will say one thing though. I hope there's a day where Great Lakes steelhead
Totally.
anglers stop apologizing for liking that fish. Like, there's this stigma that it's like this
It's not
like
steelhead, man.
it's lesser than the West Coast fish, and it's like I need everybody to realize that the fish didn't put themselves there.
Yeah.
Somebody else put them there, like humans put them there, and
Great
then
Lakes
they
steelhead's an
adapted
awesome
and
answer.
evolved,
It's an
and
awesome
a lot
answer.
of
Like,
you know,
they're
Ontario
such a fun
trids.
fish.
Yeah, I like
yeah.
wear that badge with pride. Like they're an amazing fish. If you have a problem catching 8-pound rainbows, you know, that have evolved from a strain of steelhead from the West Coast.
See you on the
then,
river, never.
You're no fun to me.
Well,
You know what? Like I'm over it. I'm over this. Like it devalues the fish. I think these fish are amazing. Like what an amazing fish. You know, especially the ones around our home waters. They're not stocked.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, these are naturalized fish. So like,
poetic.
Also,
What
like
what a
the
great
fall
success story.
fishing, you know,
Yeah.
fishing these
Fully
like
agree.
rivers here in southern Ontario in the fall, like it's the best. It's such a vibe, you know. I love it. Like it's such a cool thing.
Yeah. A fall Grand River
I'm a
steelhead.
Great Lakes steelheader, and I'm pissed off.
I love it, man. Great answer, man. Steelhead's a
That
great
sounds like a
answer.
good
Andrew. It's an awesome answer. Okay, number two. If you could fish anywhere in the world right now, assuming it's the best time of year to go, where would you go and why?
Why? Sorry.
I think I would go. There's a bunch of West Coast Pacific steelhead destinations that I would go to. I like best time of year.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. Well, it really contradicts.
Just kidding. I'm kidding. It is beautiful out there too.
Yeah, I would love to go out and do some genuine Pacific steelheading for a big summer run fish. Probably somewhere on Vancouver Island.
Nice.
I guess, right time of year. Like, I guess I would also have to add the caveat, like, in addition to it being the best time of year,
Yeah.
that the run has to be in good shape. Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of those runs aren't doing so hot, but I would love to go fish one of those runs when it's, in a good year,
Yeah.
in good conditions.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. I mean, I totally feel you. Out west for steelhead would be wicked. Be awesome. I love it. Okay, number 3 is what is your best or favorite fishing memory? One of your best fishing memories ever.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough.
It's a big
Kind
one.
of a big one.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
many over the years, you know?
I could throw in a recent one, which I'm sure will
A small
stick
one.
with me a while, but it's fresh in memory.
Yeah.
I was fishing the Ottawa River right by my place in Gatineau. That's where I live. I'm actually across the
Nice.
bridge. But I'm able to, within 5 minutes, go and chuck my little
Yeah.
inflatable boat in the Ottawa River. And, as it happens, that's a good little spot to fish pike, muskie, walleye. There's a whole bunch of stuff down there. And to give you some background, I'm having an awful year muskie-wise. I've caught a few fish, but I've had a ton of just dead outings, I guess, as often happens with muskie. And I was on probably close to a month-long drought. Went out, hoping to maybe end that, and fished one of the better spots very thoroughly, and was getting ready to leave. And I'll cast my full line out and then just reel it in to get my fly back on the reel at the end of it. And the classic, mistake you make muskie fishing is not figurating with commitment, in which case, I'd cast this one spot a million times, but something about the burning, the fly in retrieve, while you're getting it back on your reel, I guess got one fish to go. And I put my rod down beside me in the boat, after burning it back in on the surface, like, some sort of weird topwater lure. And as I put the rod down in the boat, I stood up and I started to pull my anchor, and probably a 45-ish inch fish just smashed the fly on the surface with my rod sitting on the bottom of the boat, and just picked it up and attempted the most, the crappiest hook set, and blew the only chance I had at a muskie in the last
That's a
couple
big
months.
fish, man.
So
That's a big
Don't
fish.
do that.
I'm gonna think about that one for a while. It's fresh memory. Yeah, it was a big fish.
It's all right,
Yeah, I
man.
blew it.
Everyone's
big.
blown it.
That's the way it
Muskie.
goes. At least you connected with a
That's
muskie.
okay.
Like, geez, man.
Blew it
Like,
up.
Yeah.
yeah.
If
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
fish long enough,
that's true.
you tend to blow it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. But I will say, not a whole lot of those answers come from the Ottawa
That's
River.
true.
So me personally,
100%.
I like that story.
Super cool.
Nice. Yeah.
That's definitely that's funny to hear for me because a lot of my earliest memories are on
Yeah.
pretty much where you're describing. So
Right.
that's
Hell yeah.
cool. It's cool.
Spirit Creek.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4, Mitch's Fishes 5, is why do you fly fish? What do you get out of fly fishing?
Because it's fun. I think.
Nice.
It's just fun at a basic
Yeah.
level. There's also other things I enjoy as a byproduct of just wanting to go out and have fun, but I think it would kind of be dishonest for me to say I go out for any other reason than I want to have fun and play like a little kid, I guess, do the adult version of that. But there's just so much other stuff that comes with it, as I'm sure you guys have found, that you go out in search of fun and then all of a sudden you learn, you develop a connection to wherever you're fishing. Yeah, there's just so much that goes along with it. You relax.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah,
all of
fun
those
is
things.
fun is the best answer. I think that's like the number 1 answer of why you should fly fish. It's super fun. I feel it. I feel you.
Yeah, there was I don't know if you guys watched or remembered it, but there was I think it was Drift was the first film in the Confluence film series. Or it was one of those in that series where he opens up the narrator talking about, how kids and fly fishers have something in common, and that's wanting to just have as much fun as possible as often as possible. And I couldn't agree more with that. It's really
awesome.
like
It's totally.
a youthful
It's like,
thing, I
what
think.
better reason to do anything than just fun? I mean, that's what life is. Just go have fun. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it, man.
yeah.
Okay, number
Yeah.
5, Mitch's Fishes 5 is what fly pattern represents you best and why? If you were a fly, what would you be?
I forgot you asked this one. I should have prepared.
Hey,
I have no
perfect.
idea. I'm tempted to give answers that I've heard given a lot of times. Like I kind of consider myself a generalist, so it's tempting to say woolly
Yep.
bugger, but it just seems too unoriginal. So maybe
There we go. Yeah, you're
for
more.
no particularly good reason, I'll go with a Buford.
Buford.
It's a Buford.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, that is a beefy fly.
Yeah, big beefy fly. Maybe I don't know.
That's cool.
I guess the way I fish.
Big beefy musky fly.
Yeah, like I don't know. That's just a fly that's fresh in mind, and I think I take a kind of an active approach to a lot of things I do. On the trout stream, that means spooking fish sometimes and trampling through the water because you're too excited. But it works out well if you're on
I have a few of those.
a lake with muskie.
I love
in it,
that.
so-
I love that
Yeah,
one.
Buford's
Is
my answer.
a specific color pattern, or is it like, because there's different colors of Bufords, right? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a
Nice.
good question. Now
Yeah.
maybe all black,
That's cool. That's
just because
cool.
that's the one I
slick
fish.
fly. It's cool.
Yeah.
I have a pink and white one that's done pretty well for pike, but never a muskie. But
Right. Pink is a color I got to put in my box. I see too many Instagram photos of muskie with pink flies hanging out of their mouth, and I don't have any.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. I love that
I
answer.
have
I've never
that.
had that answer before, and I like the reasoning behind it. That's super cool, man. I dig.
You dig.
I dig. Well,
Okay,
Andrew,
good.
man, I mean that's
dig.
pretty much the show, dude. And like honestly,
We're digging.
that was awesome getting to hear more about. I mean, we learned a lot about tags, and that's just because we're very interested in them. But the whole everything you're doing is really cool, and I'm super stoked to learn about the data that comes out. Where can people like find stuff, find your work, find things to follow along with, if people want to, where can they go?
A good place to go would be either the lab websites that I mentioned earlier. I hope I don't forget them, but a Google search will turn them up. If you just Google the Fish Ecology and Conservation Physiology Lab, you'll eventually come across the Cook Lab webpage, where you can look at publications, and then the Socio-Ecological Research and Applications Collaborative. A Google search of that will
Sweet.
turn up the Nguyen Lab. So
Okay, cool.
that's two good places
we'll-
to go look. And then I'll make sure that when those results are available, I'll get in contact
Nice.
with you guys, maybe directly, and send you some.
Yeah, please do. I think we'll put all that in our show notes as well. So if people listening or watching this on YouTube, if you go down to the comment section, those links will be down there, and you can learn more and probably do an even deeper dive than this podcast did. And yeah, Andrew, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks
Shameful
for your work.
plugging time.
Do you have like an Instagram or something that people can follow that you want them to follow? You don't have
Sure.
to say yes.
Sure.
Exactly. Shameful plug time.
It's at Drew Howarth, so DREWHOWARTH. I'm hoping I can, to post more research-oriented stuff there in the next
Wicked.
year, so that
Yeah,
works out.
sweet. Okay,
So-
everybody go follow that. We'll put it in the show notes and
And thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I forget. Yeah, I was gonna say, before I forget, thanks so much for having me on. Like I said, I've been listening to the podcast since you guys started it, and
Oh yeah.
it's
Oh,
kind of
man,
surreal to
love
be on
that.
it. It's cool. Thanks so much for doing it. Like, I owe you guys a ton.
oh, get the heck out of
Entertainment
here,
over
man.
here.
That's so sweet. Thank you for coming on. I mean, it was just nice to get to chat. And are you coming on? You coming to the party on Thursday or nah? Are you busy? Or are you coming?
I'm planning to. It all depends on if I finish data collection on Thursday, which I'm
data-
hoping to. So if I can
Coming
finish
your
it
waiters,
Thursday
baby. Get that
and
data collection
come stop
done.
by.
Coming to
We'll
waiters.
have a beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Wet pair of pants, neoprene wading socks. Yeah.
And then, yeah, the second we get
Remember
you get in, we'll be
yeah.
like, and this guy's doing all the work to save him, and
I
then
love
a bunch of people will nerd out.
Oh yeah, I don't deserve
That's
that
great, man.
credit.
Yeah. Hope to see you.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah,
so
man.
I,
Well, either
I
way,
hope I see
I'm
guys
sure we'll get
down there.
together on the river sometime. And Steelhead's coming, so let's go
That'd be awesome.
swinging. But thanks so much for coming on, Andrew. It was great to chat.